Morning, afternoon, evening, hello. Wherever you are in the world, whatever time of day you're watching this. This session is all about communication, but more importantly, the focus is going to be on how we communicate with our clients, particularly during BD. Now look, we all know that communication is important. Communication is always best when it's open and honest, free-flowing, timely, and of course relevant. But what's just as important is how we communicate that message, and also who are we communicated to? Who is actually doing the communicating? And of course, there's the various choice of mediums that you get and frequency. By the way, this is how I communicate to myself when I'm down the gym. Give myself these little motivational quotes. Try and convince myself by communicating that, yes, when I'm absolutely knackered after doing a workout, it's actually done me good. So when you do your first communication on BD, it could be via email, it could be a connection request, you might have commented or shared an article, you might have even done a direct phone call. There you go, I said it, I've put it out there. Yeah, actually calling somebody. Now look, I know there are advantages and disadvantages for all of these different approaches, and they can be explored in a lot more detail in the numerous content that we have in the Recruiting Gym. But for the purposes of this video, I want to focus on four things. What stops you from communicating? What makes communication difficult? What should you be communicating? And how can you improve your communication? So let's address the first one then. What stops you from communicating, especially when it comes to doing BD? I think the biggest thing that holds you back could well be your own mindset. Perhaps you think you're not worthy speaking to someone who perhaps is quite senior within an organisation. You may have them up on a pedestal, and therefore you start to believe that what you have to say, they won't be interested in. And then of course there's the other issue that you start to second guess them. You start to second guess the outcome, even before you've dialed or hit the send button. When you try to assume the outcome, it's pretty much guaranteed that those outcomes are going to be negative. They're not really going to be all that motivational. You certainly won't want to pick up the phone if you have that little voice inside your head saying things like, well, it's probably not worth touching base with them because, they've probably got a PSL. I mean, they'll think we're too expensive. I mean, they've never heard of me. Look, they've probably got suppliers that they're happy with. All of these things will stop you from making that approach. So there you have it. Your mindset and your thoughts can be great demotivators, but conversely, they can actually be really good motivators for you to make that initial approach. I mean, after all, let's face it, on a BD approach, what's the worst thing that could happen? So before you call, have a think about maybe positive outcomes, things that you could get from this call. You might even say that little voice to yourself, okay, I'm going to call this client for the first time just to get on their radar, find out what their hiring plans are, what their recruitment process is, maybe their team split, and even a callback. Now, depending on the sector you might work on, you might want to talk about projects, you might want to talk about their tech stack and what their particular challenges are. But there's other things that might stop you from communicating. And that is, I don't have an email address, or I can't get a telephone number, or there's no internet access, there's no phone. Look, do you know what these are? Excuses. None of these are insurmountable problems. So let's deal with the second point. What makes communication difficult? We've already addressed one of those issues, and it's a big one, and it's your mindset. Other things that make it difficult are things like not knowing your own products and services, not knowing your own candidates, not knowing your own company well enough, not knowing, for example, about the client, not knowing about your marketplace, not knowing enough before you pick up the phone. Clients hate receiving calls from people who profess themselves to be credible specialists in a particular area, and they clearly haven't bothered to do any sort of research, and so they have zero credibility. Even before they get to their second sentence, no credibility. The communication is poor. So communication has just become a lot more difficult, and effectively you've invited that through your poor preparation. You might as well just pick up the phone and say, oh hi, yeah, it's Alan Clark from the Recruiting Gym. Look, I know you're very busy and I'm sorry to disturb you, but I haven't done any research about you, so I know very little about your company, but I'd love to know how I can help. Brrr. You're just not going to get anywhere. Now, there may be things like communication style, language barriers, perhaps where one person is not talking in their native tongue. You also get people that maybe talk very quickly. Some people that might have strong accents. And again, they're not insurmountable problems. We either get people to talk slower or they put it in writing, or we really have to tune in to what they are saying. Sometimes when people have strong accents, you need to talk to quite a few people, or they're very pacey, just to get onto the same wavelength. Okay, let's be honest, there might well be something else that impacts the communication, that stalls it, makes it quite difficult, stops it in its tracks. And yes, I am talking about the wonderful world of gatekeepers. Those beautiful human beings who are doing a fantastic job looking after the decision makers, obviously, that you want to talk to, but they can be extremely helpful. They can actually aid the communication process. They can aid the sales process. And look, I'm not going to go into all of the objection handling and the gatekeepers and the questions you need to ask, because all of that is in the gym. This is just a precursor, if you like, but there's far too much to cover on this particular video. So C, the third thing we're going to have a look at is, well, what should you be communicating? Well, you really need to communicate who you are, what you specialize in. Go on, tell them your company name, get on the map. And you need to do these things in your initial approach, maybe a call or in an email. And look, you know that there are numerous ways to open up BD calls, numerous ways to approach people electronically, but use this as an opportunity to demonstrate something about you, demonstrate something that demonstrates your knowledge within the industry sector. It establishes credibility right from the outset. Mention something that is directly relevant to them right now, or if not, a soundbite that's being talked about in the marketplace, maybe something that's relevant, maybe something that's interesting, that's highly topical at the moment. And of course, you want to be able to get the call to the next step, or you want to be able to get your email to the next step, which is actually having a two-way dialogue, maybe even a face-to-face meeting when they're allowed again, but if not, a video conference. You might even be communicating that you've had successes with similar organizations, and therefore it's a great opportunity for you to whip out your elevator pitch. You might have an absolute superstar of a candidate that you want to share the details with, demonstrate the profile and how you believe they can add value to their particular team or division or department or project that they're working on. And don't underestimate, you're also communicating by asking intelligent and relevant and well-placed questions throughout this. Now, whether that be questions that you're posing on an article, on an email, but ideally over the phone, getting that two-way communication going. And there's something else about questioning. Well-placed, intelligent, knowledgeable questions will set you apart from the competition. Hey, look, I'm no Darren Brown, but I just want to see if I can get into your heads right now and maybe try and guess at what you're thinking. You're probably thinking, come on, Alan, a lot of this stuff is really obvious. Yes, it is. And the thing is, we've been communicating all our lives with our body language, with our tone, with our facial expressions, with our voice, with our words, how we've been writing, how we've been drawing, and I'm not talking about emojis here. So, but I just want to know, are you communicating effectively, hand on heart, effectively every single time you communicate with a client? Now, whether that's on BD or anywhere throughout the process. Communication, if you want it to be world-class, you need to constantly improve it. And that's the fourth point that I want to talk about. It's how can we improve, or how can you improve your communication? Now, needless to say, there's plenty of information on the gym and tapping in and using all the coaches that you have available to you. But let's start with, before you make the call, have a name of somebody before you make that first approach. Don't say, yeah, hi, could you possibly put me through to whoever looks after your recruitment? You know where you're going to end up, and it's probably not where you want to be. Of course, you've got to do your research before you pick up the phone. Then make your approach, ensuring that you have planned out what it is you want to say and that you've got a few key objectives that you want to get from the call. You might even plan out a few specific questions. Have your elevator pitch to hand. Have your candidate pitch to hand. I always used to have my candidate pitches, even my headhunt pitches, all typed up so that I could read them because my writing is not brilliant. But Arial, size 14, 1.5 line spacing, and every single paragraph or every single sentence became a new paragraph. And I wrote it as if it was going to be said and not read. It's amazing, isn't it, after all these years that I even remember the font and the size and everything that I used. And practice it. Look, practice is underrated. I know that if I've got an absolute superstar of a candidate that I want to present to a client, I know that I've only got that one chance to make a good first impression. So I'll run it past a colleague. I'll run it past my boss and say, look, can you ever listen to this? I might tweak it a couple of times before I then take it out to marketplace because I want to create a great first impression. And there's also something else that we need to improve upon, and that is let's not make any assumptions about our communication. Let's not make any assumptions that these clients know exactly what it is that you're going to do, because a lot of them won't know what it is you're going to do until you educate them, until you tell them. What will happen is they will put you into, on your first approach, they'll put you into the same bucket as all the other recruiters under the banner of job fillers. That's it. And sometimes the clients and the communication that you have with the clients, it does break down because they don't fully value you, because they don't fully appreciate you, because they don't understand what it is that you are going to be doing on their behalf. So once we explain, once we educate, so that all points are covered, this communication is going to be like a well-oiled machine. So if you get this communication right and it does feel like a well-oiled machine and there's that easy rapport and easy two-way flow of information, you will be taken out. You will be taken out of that job filler bucket and you will be put into the category of a trusted advisor, a specialist recruiter, a knowledge worker, a recruitment partner. Now, I know you might be thinking again that this sounds very ideal, and you might be thinking as well that, but surely communication is impacted by personalities. Yes, it is. And let's face it, there are some tough clients out there. There are some horrible clients. You might have other names for them. There are some challenging clients. There actually are some nice clients. But the thing is, every single one of those descriptions can relate to recruiters as well. Is it still true that people buy from people first? I believe so. And I think your first approach, your personality and how you come across, whether it be sort of through the written word or over the phone or face to face, it's that initial approach that will start to demonstrate some sort of credibility and start to build some sort of trust and start to build an open and honest dialogue. In other words, good communication. So finally, I hope I've communicated my messages well enough, but just by way of workouts, I've got a few things that I'd like you to focus on. So because the font is quite small, I'll disappear and you can have a look at the screen. So the first part of the workout is decide on your best approach for doing BD. You might well have your favorites, whether that be candidate pitches, elevator pitches, using sales bridges. Check out the gym for all of those approaches. Make sure that your approaches are always planned. Have some objectives and maybe even a few questions. This will help you to avoid and reduce those calls that just sort of peter out and finish. Have an introduction that creates an immediate impact through demonstrating knowledge and relevance, and don't forget to have a great opening question to start that process of communication off. Maybe go out and identify clients that you haven't spoken to in the last 6 months. Approach them, reapproach them, and maybe try a few different ways of openings through your BD approaches. And then finally, identify some new clients on the radar. They might even be new contacts within an existing client, and go and try some different communication and BD approaches. So that's it from me. Hopefully see you on the next one, and see you on the live webinars that we do on the Monday and the Friday. Take care. Good luck.